Dinosaurs are undoubtedly the most compelling evidence that life on Earth has taken familiar forms only in the last 65 million years. Before that, the continents, skies and waters of the planet were inhabited by bizarre and majestic creatures that we are now trying to reconstruct through fossil excavations and paleontological studies. Mammals, which would later occupy every sector of the ecosystem and from which the human species would evolve, were then relegated to a mere supporting role. The length of time that dinosaurs ruled the Earth is truly astonishing. Most of us are used to dealing with timescales of days to decades, but the dinosaurs, as we commonly recognize them, roamed this planet for over 160 million years, while we humans have only been here for 200,000 years. It's like saying their era lasted almost 1,000 times longer than ours. 1,000 times! That's unimaginable. And no matter how hard we try, it's truly difficult to think about the magnitude of this temporal abyss without feeling a slight sense of vertigo. But perhaps the brief description we're about to provide of this remote sequence of events will somehow help to orient your mind. Between 230 and 66 million years ago, some of the most incredible creatures that have ever lived dominated our planet. The most successful of these creatures was a group of land reptiles called dinosaurs. Not all dinosaurs lived at the same time, nor did they all live in the same part of the world, and they existed on Earth for over 165 million years. No other single group of animals has ever ruled the Earth for such a long time. One of the reasons for the success of the dinosaurs was their ability to evolve, develop and change rapidly. Although today they are considered a class of their own, dinosaurs once belonged to the class of reptiles and evolved from them about 225 million years ago, at the beginning of the Triassic period, until they occupied every possible ecological niche for a period of about 160 million years. But what made the dinosaurs different from a reptile? First of all, their posture. Their limbs were positioned under their body, whereas in reptiles, they are positioned laterally. As a result, dinosaurs had limbs that could be extended to their full length, allowing them to walk in a very different way from crawling on the ground. As a comparison, the gait of a quadrupedal species was more like that of modern rhinos or elephants than that of an iguana. Moreover, dinosaurs were exclusively terrestrial animals. Flying creatures such as pterodons and aquatic creatures like plesiosaurs belonged to a separate branch of reptiles, as did crocodiles and turtles, which were also present during the dinosaurs' golden age. Dinosaurs ranged in size from small turkey-like creatures, such as Compsognathus, to colossal 40-meter-long giants like Supersaurus. They were oviparous, laying a variable number of eggs and carefully incubating them to keep predators away. The length of their lifespan probably depended on their metabolism, which was accelerated in smaller creatures and slowed in gigantic ones. They made a variety of sounds, according to fossil studies, and their leathery skin was probably multicolored. Whether they were cold-blooded or warm-blooded is still debated today. However, it seems that some dinosaurs gradually developed a warm-blooded system, while others underwent metabolic changes as they grew. The evolution of dinosaurs spanned the entire Mesozoic Era, parallel to the changing climatic conditions and the fragmentation of the Pangaea supercontinent, which gave rise to the continents we know today. This long era is divided into three distinct periods with unique characteristics. The Triassic, which witnessed the birth of the dinosaurs and their initial expansion, was a rather arid period and very challenging. The supercontinent Pangaea was still a single block, allowing dinosaurs to occupy it in its entirety. Herbivorous dinosaurs, in search of wet areas where they could find edible vegetation, were followed by the carnivorous dinosaurs, whose survival depended on the presence of prey. During this period, different species developed different morphologies. From this stage on, dinosaurs began to divide into Saurischians and Ornithischians. The former had a reptilian pelvis and included most bipedal carnivorous dinosaurs, as well as the large, long-necked herbivores, while the latter had a pelvis similar to that of a bird. Herbivores with beaks were part of this second group and would flourish mainly in the following geological periods. The first dinosaurs of the Triassic were bipedal, fast and small. Although small on average, Eoraptor, the most primitive dinosaur, reached a length of 1 meter and weighed 10 kilograms. Some of the early dinosaurs were already distinguished by their size. For example, the herbivorous bipedal Brachiosaurus could reach lengths of about 8 meters, and the carnivorous bipedal Hadrosaurus exceeded 4 meters in length and 1.5 meters in height. The second period of the Mesozoic Era, the Jurassic period, from 200 to 144 million years ago, experienced significant climate change. Oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in the air continued to rise, encouraging lush vegetation and the emergence of new plant species. The climate, which was dry in the heart of Pangaea, became more humid. Pangaea itself began its slow fragmentation that would lead to the formation of the continents as we know them today. New types of vegetation and more fertile and prosperous environments favored the spread of sauropods, peaceful herbivorous quadrupeds that reached the largest sizes ever recorded. They were characterized by a short body and columnar, robust limbs, with the hind limbs typically longer. The neck and tail were very long, and the head was small, with an underdeveloped set of teeth suitable for a vegetarian diet. The most famous sauropods that lived in the late Jurassic included Brontosauruses, which could reach 20 meters in length and weigh about 30 tons, and Diplodocus, which could reach 27 meters in length but had a less massive body structure than the former. Even larger was the Brachiosaurus, which was shorter but weighed about 80 tons and is considered the largest land animal that ever existed. To move and support their enormous masses, sauropods had a very robust skeleton with numerous cavities housing the powerful muscles necessary to sustain their movement. The head was extremely small, related to the rest of the body, and there are theories suggesting the presence of a second brain within the spine of these sauropods, allowing for more responsive control of a body weighing tens of tons. Gigantism provided these herbivorous dinosaurs with relative safety from predators. Other herbivorous dinosaurs were smaller, but still very successful. Stegosaurus, for example, could graze peacefully on plants, protected by large bony plates on its back and tail, equipped with formidable spines. It was challenging prey for even the most formidable predators. These plates, arranged in 2 rows along the back, began at the neck and reached almost to the tip of the tail, reaching their greatest size about the middle of the back. On the tail were 2 or 4 large spines that could also be used as offensive weapons. In addition to the numerous carnivorous saurischians, the ornithischians also spread out, which included very different animals, from the smaller and agile lizard-eating running dinosaurs to the larger and more aggressive ones, such as massive Allosaurus, the dominant carnivore of its time. The Allosaurus was characterized by 2 vertical crests on its snout, a large and massive head, and jaws capable of tearing apart meat it ingested. The neck muscles were developed to make the bite as effective as possible. Even the jaw joint had evolved to allow considerable widening to facilitate the passage of food. Hunting was a solitary affair, possibly utilizing ambush techniques. In addition to large dinosaurs whose hunting speed was hindered by their size, the Jurassic period also saw medium-sized dinosaurs, such as Ornitholestes, which was much more agile and fast, and small lizard-eating dinosaurs such as Compsognathus, the smallest dinosaur known to date, measuring only 30 centimeters, but probably capable of climbing trees. The third period, the Cretaceous, from 144 to 66 million years ago, was mainly a time of species differentiation due to the continual fragmentation of Pangaea. Contrary to what one might think, the last period of the Mesozoic was prosperous for large reptiles, which reached the peak of their diversity and distribution. It was during this period that the most famous armored herbivorous dinosaurs such as Triceratops and Ankylosaurus appeared. These true tanks were characterized by a massive body and a large head protected by broad, shield-like crests and horns. The snout had a beak-like shape and could also be protected by an additional horn, similar to the modern rhinoceros. Following a very similar evolution pattern, the ankylosaurs appeared as stocky dinosaurs with a heavily armored back in the shape of an upside-down boat. This armor extended to the top of the skull. The tail was often equipped with offensive weapons, including the most characteristic feature, a double bony club at the tip. Next to appear were the ornithischians, all herbivorous but also mostly bipedal. Ornithopods, whose name means bird's foot because their feet resemble those of modern birds, form a large suborder of ornithischians that includes numerous families. Ornithopods were all herbivorous and could be bipedal or bipedal quadrupedal, and most were agile runners. The most characteristic ornithopod is the Iguanodon, which lived in the early Cretaceous. It was a large bipedal dinosaur, almost 5 meters tall and 9 meters long, with highly developed hind legs compared to the front ones. Among the most curious Cretaceous ornithopods are the Hadrosaurs, also known as duck-billed dinosaurs, because of their strange head shape. While their body was very similar to that of Iguanodons, their skull was elongated, flattened and protruded forward, with a beak similar to that of a duck. The mouth at the back was equipped with numerous teeth. They had bony crests on the top of their heads that protected nasal cavities, indicating they were reptiles with a highly sensitive sense of smell. Thanks to the discovery of preserved meals in the fossil remains of one of these reptiles, we know that hadrosaurs ate fruits, seeds, and conifer needles. Obviously, the Cretaceous period, at least the late Cretaceous, must be considered the personal realm of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, one of the largest terrestrial predators of all time, if not the largest. From one of the most complete fossil specimens named Sue, a maximum length of at least 12.4 meters was estimated, with a weight that could well exceed 8.4 tons. However, according to the recent analysis of another exceptionally well-preserved specimen, the maximum length could come in at over 13 meters. One of the most striking features of this theropod is undoubtedly the size of its head. The largest skull ever measured over 1.5 meters in length, very broad at the base and tapering to the snout. These and other skeletal and muscular features of the skull most likely allowed T-Rex to have the most powerful bite ever known, capable of easily crushing even the hardest bones. Only modern crocodiles are proportionally equipped with a bite force comparable to that of Tyrannosaurus. Its teeth were also unique and enormous. They were heterodont, showing differentiation in shape and size. The largest, however, could exceed 30 centimeters in length, including the root, making them the largest teeth ever found in a dinosaur. T-Rex had a massive body, but its upper limbs were extremely small. The arms were only about 3 feet long and had only 2 clawed fingers. According to some paleontologists, the sharp claws on the hand were used for grasping and cutting prey. Others hypothesize that they played a key role in holding the female during mating. Females, until recently thought to be larger, had their hypothesis of pronounced sexual dimorphism scaled back by recent studies. The presence of soft, filamentous feathers on the skin has been, and still is, much debated. We know for certain that many theropods were covered with feathers and plumes very similar to those of modern birds. Studies of T-Rex fossil skin impressions suggest that this predator was also covered in feathers, but the extent of this plumage remains to be understood. Some believe that the predator was covered over much of its body, while others suggest that feathers were limited to the upper torso, leaving scales exposed on the tail, limbs, and neck. Another iconic dinosaur of the Cretaceous was Velociraptor, an agile predator of small size, less than half the size depicted in the movie Jurassic Park, with long arms and strong legs capable of great leaps and fast sprints. Despite its name, it did not have the proportions of a fast runner. Its peculiarity was the sickle-shaped claw on the second toe of each foot. During locomotion, this claw was kept off the ground, but when necessary, could be quickly lowered to act as a climbing hook on tree trunks or, like birds of prey, to grab that which they were hunting and hold it down while inflicting bites and slashes with its hands. Some fossil discoveries in China of Velociraptor-related dinosaurs, which have exceptionally preserved their body coverings, have also shown that these animals were feathered throughout their bodies and had real feathers on their arms and at the tip of their long, stiff tails. It's not proven that these animals hunted in packs and developed strategies as depicted in Jurassic Park, but it is certain that they had well-developed brains and senses. It is reasonable to imagine them as very similar to modern birds, both in behavior and movement, as the latter are descendants of a group of dinosaurs related to the raptors. It seemed like it would last forever, but 65 or 66 million years ago, the reign of the great reptiles suddenly came to an end. How and why it happened is still subject of debate, although it is now certain that on that day, an asteroid over 12 kilometers in diameter collided with our planet and hit the ground where the Yucatan Peninsula is today. It formed a crater, half of which is hidden beneath the depths of the Gulf of Mexico. Such an impact not only caused earthquakes and floods, but also raised a massive amount of debris that obscured the atmosphere, causing long-lasting climate changes and completely disrupting all the parameters that regulated life on Earth. A significant drop in global temperature and the probable reduction of sunlight due to the perpetual black cloud of suspended dust in the atmosphere must have had a decisive and radical impact on terrestrial vegetation, destroying much of it and preventing photosynthesis. This led to a demographic collapse of herbivorous species and, consequently, of carnivorous species. When the first rays of sunlight managed to get through, they illuminated vast uninhabited plains, devoid of forests and covered in ash, and oceans virtually devoid of life. In this desolation, fungi and algae shared their existence with only a few other creatures, such as small mammals and ferns. Over millions of years, conditions improved, climates diversified, and new species evolved to repopulate the Earth. As long as the dinosaurs existed, mammals had no room to thrive and become dominant. Free from their presence and with an increasingly prosperous planet at their disposal, they were finally able to flourish and begin the long journey that led to the emergence of the first hominids and eventually Homo sapiens, our species. It's probably thanks to this asteroid, to the devastation it brought to the planet millions of years ago, that you are now sitting in front of a screen being told this, which is also our own story, after all.